Rodeos are against the law and must therefore be banned, according to a new report released this evening by the Animal Law Association. The 92-page report is the first time the legality of rodeos in New Zealand has been comprehensively examined, rather than the usual debate about whether they're ethical. The lawyer and report author, Katrina McLennan, says no legislative change is needed because rodeos are already in breach of the Animal Welfare Act.
Our main animal law is the Animal Welfare Act, and that sets the basic principles and fundamentals for how animals are to be treated. And that includes the 5 freedoms, which probably listeners will be quite familiar with, that animals have to be given food, shelter, water, opportunities to display natural behaviour. It also bans ill-treating animals, and it creates a number of offences. And trying not to be too lawyerly, but under acts there can be made regulations and codes, and people will probably be familiar that it's actually codes for animals. So we have the Rodeo Code, and what the Rodeo Code does is runs completely contrary to the Act, and it allows the use of electric prods and flank straps and spurs and ropes being thrown around young calves' necks and young calves being slammed onto the ground. And if you look at the main Act, it's quite clear that all of that is contrary to and banned by the main Act. And because the Act is the supreme piece of law, you can't have codes that permit things the Act doesn't permit. We just can't do that in our law. And I think Parliament, the government, the Ministry for Primary Industries and the National Animal Welfare Advisory Committee need to look at this and take steps to remedy this, because you just can't have non-adherence to the law.
And Ms McLennan's assessment also matches a 2015 Internal Ministry for Primary Industries memo that said rodeos could be prosecuted if it wasn't for the Rodeo Code of Welfare. So earlier today we put that to the Associate Minister for Agriculture, Meka Whaitiri, who's right now receiving the report at Parliament. She earlier this month said she wasn't looking at banning rodeos, but does the report change anything for her?
I've flicked through it. But I'm obviously getting my officials to analyse it much more deeper, and to make sure that any recommendations I've built in it are taken on board by my National Animal Welfare Advisory Committee, who are working on specific issues around rodeos.
Yeah, it is very long, 92 pages. No one would have expected you to read it through in detail yet. But so you are taking, I guess, putting it through for legal advice to see if their analysis of the law is correct?
No, not just legal advice, just in terms of obviously the recommendations are raised through their own analysis, and seeing whether it obviously can enhance the directive I've given to officials specifically around rodeo practices. And so that's the level that we're, wanting to make sure that the authors have been heard in terms of the concerns, and that we are actively taking on board some of the recommendations. But again, it needs to go through my officials to make sure that we are lining up with the addressing of those really critical issues around rodeo practices that I've already identified.
One of the things they pointed to in this report is a changing of what they believe, a changing of public opinion, and that they believe that the majority of the New Zealand public now opposes rodeos. If we can put aside whether that's true or not, does public opinion matter to you?
Oh, look, on a lot of the issues, and this one will be no different, but for me it's a balancing approach in terms of 65,000 people have obviously signed the petition that's calling for the banning on one side, and very strong advocates for the banning of them. Then I've got to balance that across the 100 or so thousand attendees and their families in small communities throughout New Zealand who attend rodeos. And so no one's saying that this isn't a contentious issue. I've just come out starting with a starting point around saying, at this point, I will not be banning rodeos, but I am getting down to the heart of the practices in rodeos that seems to cause a lot of concern, and I'll be getting a report in May.
Are we expecting a response, an official response to this report in May, or could that be a bit later?
Oh, No. Look, I would actually ensure that my officials respond fully to the report that's going to be tabled tonight. Whether it's before or approximately around May, we'll try and work that detail out. But rest assured, there will be a full response from the government on it.